Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 5th, 2026 edition of Douglas Now Live. I'm Robert Preston Jr. here live in the Douglas Now studios on West Walker Street. School has started. And in fact, about half of our topics tonight are going to deal with school, with the first day of school, the first week of school, the first month of school. Many of you know that I am married to a teacher, so it has been dark days at my house the last week or two, and then heading into Monday. So, and of course, students did not go back until yesterday. So, but Monday, even though kids weren't there, it was still rough. It was still rough. So, those of us who are teacher spouses, it's been stressful the last couple of weeks. So the kids are back in school. Everybody takes some extra time with where you're headed in the mornings. I know I got caught in the Indian Creek traffic this morning. I told myself when I went to bed last night, give yourself a few extra minutes to get to where you need to go. Leave a little bit early. You're going to have some traffic. I totally forgot about it this morning. I dragged around, waited till the very last minute to leave, and I was late getting where I needed to go. And it was no one's fault but my own. And it's going to be that way really tomorrow and Friday. And you'll probably see a little bit of the traffic slack off next week. But remember, if you're around the middle school in the morning or in the afternoon, middle school's a mess. It always is. But with the start of school, we have the start of the fall athletic season. It certainly does not feel like fall out there right now, but we have two teams already playing, and we will get to see some high school football action this weekend as well. The Coffee Lady Trojans and the CCA Lady Patriots have both played softball games, regular season softball games. Both teams opened their seasons yesterday. The Lady Patriots had a big day over in Chula playing Tift area. Remember, they are two-time defending state champions. And they continued where they left off, defeating the 3A Lady Panthers of Tift area 23-0 in 3 innings. Two Lady Patriot pitchers combined for a no-hitter. That would be Peyton Harper, who threw 2 innings. In fact, it was one batter short of a perfect game for Peyton and for Shanley Meeks, who came in and threw 1 perfect inning. But Peyton gave up 1 walk. That was the only Lady Panther to reach base. So the two CCA pitchers faced 1 more than the minimum. But again, Peyton Harper and Shanley Meeks combined for a 3-inning no-hitter. Of course, when you score 23 runs in a game, it's going to be a run rule shortened event. So the Patriots were an offensive juggernaut yesterday. Brylan Waldron, Maddie Lewis, Arabelle Roberts each had 3 hits. Meeks and Emma Gorley had 2 hits each. Waldron drove in 3, while Claire Mercer and Roberts also drove in 3. Emma Gorley, Maddie Lewis, and Roberts also scored 3 times. So the Lady Patriots scored early and often, and again, look like they are going to be another team through which the state championship is going to go. All right, they're going to be in that mix at the end of the season. We're not predicting a three-peat here. We certainly hope it happens, but a lot will take place between now and the end of the season. But certainly, you've got to give the Lady Patriots, the postseason nod with regard to three-peating. I don't think we've ever had that. I don't know that we've had any team, any high school team that I can think of win 3 state championships in a row. Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying this to put the Lady Patriots on the hot seat by any stretch, but they lost a few players last year, but they've got still a really, really good nucleus, and they're already off to a hot start here at the beginning of the season. They open the home schedule, I believe, on Friday. It is. when they host Fullington Academy. First pitch scheduled for 4 p.m. Now, what's neat about this season, there are lights on CCA softball field, but they have yet to play under the lights. The lights were installed after last season ended. So you don't really appreciate nor understand the flexibility that gives you with scheduling, particularly when you get a little bit later in the season. Even though the time will not change before the season ends, the days do get shorter. So it does make scheduling a little bit trickier. But CCA now has lights, not only on the softball field, they also have lights on the baseball field. We saw that. And they have permanent lighting on the football field as well. That's going to make a tremendous difference. So yeah, we're pretty excited about what is going to happen over on Highway 158 West there with the Lady Patriots. So congratulations to CCA on a big win yesterday. Lady Trojans played yesterday, came back and played again today. Unfortunately, lost both games. Played Irwin County yesterday in Irwin. The Indians won 6-3. Today, traveled over to Jessup and played Wayne County. Wayne won 4-3 in walk-off fashion. Ida Anderson hit a solo home run in the bottom of the 7th inning to win the game. The two teams were tied 3-3. The Lady Trojans scored all of their runs on home runs. You had Ella Edge, who was seen here. This is from yesterday. Ella homered yesterday, and also Allie Pridgeon homered yesterday. She homered again today as well. And Jocelyn Fender added a home run today. So the Lady Trojans lost 4-3. We scored all of our runs on solo home runs again. Jocelyn Fender hit a home run. Allie Pridgeon hit one, and then Ella Edge seen here rounding third base on her first home run of the season yesterday. Got her second of the season today, along with Allie. So tough day for the Lady Trojans, but we know they're going to find their stride, right? We've had a pretty good softball team the last few years, very much a postseason contender. And they're well coached and got some really good players. And of course, Ella Edge here, phenomenal player. We've got some really good pitchers. Maggie Brown is back. So Lady Trojans are going to have a good year. Lost a tough one today, but we know that they're going to turn things around as well. So it's hard to believe that we're already talking about the fall athletic season. We're going to get into some cross country here before long. And of course, football, and more football. Don't sleep on the CCA Patriots this year, all right? CCA, there have been some shakeups with the teams. A few teams have moved up. CCA does play 8-man football, okay? And they had two of the best teams in the state in 8-man move up to 11-man. So it leaves a pretty good void here that some teams are going to have to step in. Now, remember, last year, CCA hosted a home playoff game. They look like they should be in position to host another home playoff game this year. So you're going to have the Patriots should be in the mix at the end of the season. The Coffee Trojans should return to the playoffs or return to a deep run in the playoffs this year. The Georgia High School Football Daily has started again. They've going through their previews of the different classifications, and we got to coffee, I believe it was, yesterday. They have us projected to finish 4th in the region with a roughly 90% chance to make the playoffs. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind this year with the Trojans, now CCA, the GIAA, and all sports have been doing this for several years. But this year, all of GHSA, the postseason bursts are going to be based on power rankings, all right? Not necessarily where you finish in your region. In the past, it's been the top 4 teams of a region would make the playoffs, all right? And, you know, some of those number 4 teams could be pretty weak, and some of the 5 and 6 teams, if you're in a strong region, can be pretty strong. So there were teams that made the playoffs each year that probably shouldn't have, and there were other teams that should have made the playoffs that didn't. So in an effort to try to straighten that out and again create a more level playing field, the GHSA moved to a power ranking system. They've been doing this for a few years in the lower classifications, but it's moved up to the higher classifications this year. So finishing fourth in the region may not guarantee a playoff spot. At the same time, finishing below the fourth seed out of the top four, you could still make the playoffs depending upon where you fall in the rankings. And that also has some effect on whether or not you host a home playoff game. The way it's been in the past, top two seeds host home playoff games, and then you go from there. That may not necessarily be the case this year either, all right? Because the higher ranked team, no matter where you finished in your region, is going to host a playoff game. So theoretically, you could be a number 3 or 4 seed and host a home playoff game. You could also be, a number 2 seed and travel depending upon who you play and where the rankings are. Now, one thing the GHSA does that the GIAA does not do is it weighs a little more heavily towards region champions. So you're not necessarily, I don't know, guaranteed a home playoff game if you're a region champion, but you're certainly going to be in the driver's seat for that. All right. So yeah, region champions get a little more grace in the rankings. All right. So, but what it also does is it counts all of your games towards your rankings. In the past, you would hear coaches say when the region schedule started, well, the first season is over with, and now the second season begins, and we're at a 0-0 record, and it's really what happens from here on out that matters. It's not the case anymore. It's not the case at all. Your non-region games matter. They affect your rankings. If you remember, again, a couple of years ago, I believe it was Fitzgerald and Appling maybe played at the end of the season. They were not in the same region, not in the same classification, but in the lower classifications, the GHSA used the power rankings again to determine the playoff seedings. So what would normally have happened, I think they missed a game because of the hurricane. In the past, they would have just knocked that game out of schedule and said, we're not going to play it. It's a non-region game. It doesn't matter. But those two teams played because it very much affected where they finished up in the playoff picture. So this year's going to be different with the Coffee Trojans, and really with all of our sports, not just football. It's going to have the same effect in softball, baseball, basketball, all of those sports that played under the top four. The top 4 teams go to the playoffs. That's going to change this year. Okay, and again, it could be that you finish 5th or 6th and still make the playoffs. It could be that you finish 4th and don't. So we're going to have to see how that goes. Now, the Georgia high school football pundits believe that the Trojans are going to be a playoff team one way or the other. Another interesting thing to keep in mind is that Tift County is now in our region. So instead of having 6 teams in our region, we now have 7, the same teams that we've had the last few years with the addition of Tift County. All right. So we are now have another rivalry game in our region. So that should be a lot of fun all the way around to have Tift County not only back on the schedule, but on the schedule as a region opponent. So that should add some interest. And speaking of high school football, tomorrow night, CCA is going to play an intra-squad scrimmage following their open house. And then on Friday night, the Trojans will host the Fitzgerald Purple Hurricanes for their preseason scrimmage. And we've played Fitzgerald the last several years, and we alternate. One year we're over there, one year we're over here. So this year we will be playing Fitzgerald here in, again, the preseason scrimmage. So football season is upon us, and it's going to be fun to watch this year because there are going to be some differences. All right. These non-region games are going to count. They haven't counted in the past, but they will this year. So, and we will be talking about this a lot. We will be following the rankings each week, both for CCA and for Coffee High, because it's not a situation where, and I'm not saying that we would sleep on our non-region opponents, But if you know, you need to try some things and do things a little differently, see what works, what doesn't work, maybe use a little different personnel, you can do that early in the season, finalize your lineup and do a few different things, knowing that it's not necessarily going to hurt you in the playoff picture. Not the case anymore. Every game counts. Every single game counts. So there could be some surprises at the end of the year. We will see how that shakes up. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk about school bus safety. Very important. And in fact, I learned something today that I did not know. And I consider myself someone who really does understand the rules of the road, tries to be a safe driver, obey all the rules. And I've realized today that I have been breaking a major rule with regard to school bus safety. We'll talk about that in just a second. When someone is injured in an accident, they need three things: answers, a plan, and a legal team they can trust. That's what you get at the law office of Bruce Edwards in Douglas, along with a healthy dose of old school toughness and modern strategy to boot. We are here to help. Give us a call and let us work for you. Looking for design, printing, or shipping solutions? Stop by PostNet in Douglas or Waycross today. From business cards to signs and all small business and personal print projects in between, we've got your back with our full-service printing capabilities. We offer custom packing and shipping options through UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service, so you can always choose what works best for you. Welcome back. School bus safety. School buses started running again with children on them yesterday, and they will continue to run through the end of the school year. So, school bus safety, what is the law? Let me show you what I want. This picture here, okay? I have always been erroneously under the impression if a school bus stopped on a multi-lane road like this, on a 4-lane road, that traffic in this particular picture, you have a school bus here, all right, and you've got other cars over here, that these cars here did not have to stop, that a school bus would not stop and have children cross the road on a 4-lane road. So, and I don't know how many times I have encountered this. I know I can recall at least one time I slowed down, but I did not stop, all right? But you do, in fact, have to stop if it is for example, and I've seen this out on 441, all right, where school buses let kids out at homes and on subdivisions that come up to 441. You have to stop in both directions, all right, even though it's a 4-lane road. The only time you do not have to stop is in this picture over here, whether there's an unpaved barrier, whether there's a concrete barrier of some kind, whether grass or something like that, that separates the two different sides. So in this particular case, with a barrier between, let's just say northbound, southbound here, you have a vehicle, for the purposes of where we are in the studio, traveling north, southbound traffic over here, kids getting off. You don't have to stop here if there's a barrier. Over here, which is like 441, you have to stop. And of course, on a 2-lane road, you have to stop. So our school bus safety tips: please be alert and exercise patience and caution, especially when you see children waiting at bus stops or when they're getting on and off buses. Don't be impatient. It's not worth it. This would help people so much, in so many different ways, if you would just be patient when you drive. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When we are driving, for the average person, driving is when you should be the most diligent, the most attentive, the most aware of your surroundings, and the most patient. And oftentimes, it is when we are the most distracted, the least attentive, the most impatient. So, be patient. And when you see kids, slow down, give them a little bit of room, all right? It's just not worth it. And of course, be alert when you see kids going to and from the school bus stop. Exercise care and be responsive again, as children congregate around the bus stop. They may be thinking about getting to school. They may also think that you see them, and they may walk out in the road. They may get too close to the road. A lot of times, particularly younger kids who don't drive, don't understand exactly how the rules of the road work. So if you see kids, no matter where they are, go slow, give them a wide berth. When you see the yellow flashing lights on the front and rear of a school bus, get ready to act. What this means is that a bus stop is about to take place. What it tells you to do is slow down. Slow down and prepare to stop, not speed up to beat the bus. All right? Don't do that. When you see those yellow lights, slow down. Sometimes kids can be impulsive. They may dart out, particularly if they're picking up. Kids can dart out into traffic. They can start moving toward the bus before the bus stops. When you see those yellow lights, begin to slow down. When a bus comes to a full stop and you see the red lights activate and the stop arm deploy, obey the law. All right. You got to stop. All right. Again, in the 3 different scenarios here, 2 out of the 3, you have to stop. So in almost every instance, you're going to have to stop. All right. And even over here where there's an unpaved barrier, slow down and be prepared to stop. A kid shouldn't try to run over here and jump across the barrier, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. And of course, be attentive when stopping. You must remain stopped until all the kids are either on board in the morning or until they have gotten off the bus and cleared the roadway by at least 12 feet. So give them a little bit of berth. All right. Give them some room. But this was kind of interesting to me, again, when I saw it this morning, was this right here. Until today, I did not think that traffic over here had to stop, but you do. And that would hold true for 441 and then any other 4-lane that we have here in Coffee County. If you're headed out west on 32 going toward Ambrose, same situation out there. All right. East and westbound traffic has to stop if a school bus is loading or unloading. On 441, north and southbound traffic has to stop as well. Listen, I can't begin to fathom the responsibility that school bus drivers have and the liability that the school system has transporting as many kids as they do on a daily basis with as many buses as they have. The thought of it actually terrifies me when you think of everything that could happen. And we don't typically have any major incidents. There are fender benders and things happen when you're out on the road, but we haven't had anything serious. And knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us. I hope it doesn't happen. But one of the ways that we can keep the potential for accidents to a minimum is to be patient, to be cautious, to be defensive, and to give kids the room and the space that they need when getting on and off buses. And remember, if you're moving around the county early in the morning when buses are running or in the afternoon when buses are running, pay attention and look out for them and give them the extra time that they need, and give yourself the extra time that you need. And stay away from the middle school. Stay away from the middle school early in the morning or in the mid-afternoon. It's a nightmare over there. Even after traffic subsides a little bit over the next couple of days, the middle school is still a very difficult place to navigate during the school year. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears, get outside of Coffee County, and talk a little bit about affordability and what that may or may not mean as we speed toward the November elections. We'll be back in just a second. A car accident can have serious consequences far beyond the initial crash. Your life and the lives of your loved ones can be turned upside down. Missed work, lost wages, totaled vehicles, and insurance companies that don't want to help. You need a law firm that will fight for you. You've come to the right place. Looking for design, printing, or shipping solutions? Stop by PostNet in Douglas or Waycross today. From business cards to signs and all small business and personal print projects in between, we've got your back with our full-service printing capabilities. We offer custom packing and shipping options through UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service, so you can always choose what works best for you. Got a pretty big election coming up in November. Of course, we have an election for governor here in Georgia. We have some congressional races out there. There are a lot of different issues that are shaping this election season. One of the most oft discussed is affordability. I'm not sure the word affordability existed until the last couple of years. I had not heard it before. And I will tell you that I don't like the word affordability, right? And I don't like the way the discussion goes a lot of times, because first of all, in some cases, the issue of affordability is related to poor financial choices that we as a whole, as a society, have made. All right, that's part one. Part two is when we discuss affordability, that it seems as though we are asking the government to solve this problem, that we are asking the government to make our lives cheaper, less expensive. All right. I don't know that that's necessarily the government's role, and I certainly don't like the government getting directly involved in matters like this. I don't think that it's necessarily the government's responsibility. Now, what I do think the government should do is create a climate and create an environment where businesses can operate in a manner that keeps costs within within an acceptable range, whatever that is. I don't know how you define that. And that's, in fact, what we may be talking about to some degree. But I would dare say that there are some proposals on the table that would supposedly, make affordability more affordable. That would actually do the exact opposite. Let me explain. There are a couple of issues that pop up primarily when you talk about affordability. Okay, one is gas and one is housing. There's also groceries. We're not going to get into groceries very much. We're going to talk about gas. We're going to talk about housing, right? So, gas is too expensive and housing is too expensive. What can we do to bring those prices down? All right, and I'm going to use these two as an example that I think, and then I'm going to use something that affects me. I'm going to talk about that, and that I think will should provide some type of picture of how affordability would permeate through the economy and what we could do to make things cheaper all the way around. So, gas and housing. Now, gas prices are not set by the federal government. The president does not set gas prices. Congress does not set gas prices. That's based on world markets. Okay. But it ultimately comes down to supply, right? Right. Remember what you learned in 10th grade economics. Okay. If you want to bring prices down for anything, you increase the supply. All right. If you want to make prices increase, you increase the demand. And when you increase demand, you do so by reducing the supply. All right. So if we want to make gasoline more affordable, then we need more gasoline. That's the simplest answer. Okay. The war in Iran is not helping. All right. That's not helping at all. But that's not, if it ended now, and we could do a long talk about the war in Iran, because I am not at all in favor of that. It's a bad idea. It goes completely against one of President Trump's major campaign promises. We could go on and on about this. But anyway, if the war in Iran ended right now, before we signed off, gas prices might drop a little bit, but they're not going to drop significantly. Okay. I don't think they're going to drop significantly enough to make a major impact for most Americans. So what do? More gasoline, more oil. So how do you do that? We produce more oil here in the United States. All right. We prospect for oil, we explore for oil, we drill for oil, we up our domestic production. All right. And of course, it takes time to do that. But if we would utilize the natural resources that we have here in the United States, then we could bring the price of oil down significantly. But you might be saying, if we did that, we would harm the environment. You would certainly have to relax environmental regulations, and that's going to be a theme that we talk about ultimately is the relaxation of regulations. But you have to do that in order to get more oil and more gasoline to the marketplace. So this is where you look at the trade-offs. We talk about affordability. We want lower energy prices. All right. Are we willing to give a little bit over here with some of the environmental regulations in order to bring the price of gasoline down? If we're not, then the gasoline prices are going to stay up. At the moment, we are too dependent upon oil and the price of oil as it relates to outside entities. All right. So again, the way to increase or to decrease the price of gas is to increase the supply. All right. And we would do that by using the resources that we have here in the United States. Now, let's talk about housing for just a second. All right. Housing is too expensive. I'm very concerned about my 20-year-old who is at Georgia Southern right now. How is he going to find housing when he graduates and gets a job? When he gets married and starts a family, what's going to happen with the housing market? All right. Well, the same principle applies as we just talked about with gas and with oil. If you want the price of housing to go down, then you build more houses, apartments, affordable housing, subdivisions, what have you. The more houses you have, the less housing is going to cost. Now, the same thing though, the same obstacles you run into with housing, you also run into with oil production, and it's government regulations. This is starting to get a little bit of bipartisan support, but not to the point that it needs to. It is too hard and too expensive to build houses in the United States. It just is. Now, I don't think you need to do away with all regulations and with all building codes and things like that, because you want stable, sturdy, well-built, safe housing. But you can go to a point far and beyond that to where housing is cost prohibitive to build houses. And let me give you an example. This happened right here in Coffee County. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here for a couple of reasons, but I have a cousin of mine who has built a few duplexes, and he is finishing up a project in Broxton. This is Broxton. This is not New York City. This is not Atlanta, Miami. Pick a city. This is Broxton. Going to build a duplex over there. The cost that he incurred, or he thought he was going to incur initially, because of permits, because of inspections, because of bureaucratic red tape in Broxton, had him to the point that he was not going to build the duplex. It was too aggravating. It was too expensive. He would not have been able to recoup the building costs through renting those apartments or those duplexes had he gone forward with the project as it was originally explained to him. He appealed to the Broxton City Council. They relented a little bit, and he was able to get started. But it has still been a long and difficult process because there's a lot of red tape, still a lot of red tape to deal with in the course of building this duplex. This is in Broxton. We're not talking about what these folks in California are going to get into as they rebuild after the wildfires. And you can talk to other people in Coffee County who have had nightmare issues rebuilding after Hurricane Helene. All right. So one of the reasons why we don't have more housing is because it's too difficult and too expensive to build housing. Then when you do, you have to charge so much for it. Again, it's cost prohibitive for a lot of families. So You relax some restrictions, not to the point that it gets unsafe or unstable, but you relax some of these guidelines, and we can have cheaper gas. We can have cheaper housing. Now, let me give you an example from my from one of my hobbies, one of my interests, to show you how this works. Okay. Affordability, it goes beyond just gas and housing and groceries. It goes into all aspects of the economy. All right. Any regulation that prevents people from getting into a business or getting into an industry ultimately drives the price of that industry up. Okay. And once again, there's a fine line between unregulating something to the point that it becomes dangerous, to regulating it so much that it becomes cost prohibitive to provide a good or a service to the people. Now, this is a bad example, but I found that people remember the bad examples better than they do the good ones a lot of times. But this is one, you can see the principle here. All right. So for the last 35, 36 years, I have kept reptiles, primarily snakes. Over that entire time, my main objective in keeping reptiles is not so I can walk outside and say, oh, look, out to my snake house and say, look, I've got snake X, Y, and Z. It's to take these animals into schools, into educational settings, and do presentations and talk about snakes, and hopefully teach people that you shouldn't fear these animals and you shouldn't kill them on sight just because they're snakes. Okay. And people will ask me sometimes, well, what's a good snake and what's a bad snake? I think they're all good snakes, whether it's a rattlesnake, a water moccasin, a copperhead, or a rat snake. I think they're all good snakes. All right. And you shouldn't kill any of them. What I like to do is to show people how neat they are, explain the role that they play in the environment and in the ecosystem, and they're just as vital as anything else. So that's not been something I've done as a job, but it's something I've done as a pretty serious hobby. And still, again, 36 years later, I still have snakes. Now, at my house, one snake that I have, and I bought this snake years ago to do presentations with. All right. It's a 12-foot Burmese python. His name's Ted. Ted is a beautiful snake. Ted is very tame, and we've had a lot of fun with Ted over the years. Now, not too long ago, maybe about 3 years ago, the state started regulating Burmese pythons. All right. Now, I understand why they do it, but I do not agree with it. I think it's based on faulty assumptions. It's based on faulty science, and it is more reactionary than anything else. One of the reasons why, or the driving force behind why the state is regulating Burmese pythons, has to do with what's going on in the Everglades. And Burmese pythons have established themselves in the Everglades. They are not going anywhere. You're not going to be able to eradicate them. You can control them. You can try to keep their numbers in check, but they have established themselves. They are a part of the South Florida ecosystem. Now, they're not coming north. There's not going to be enough global warming, enough climate change, whatever, to create an environment here in South Georgia where Burmese pythons can live, or any part of Georgia. All right. They just can't. It's not going to happen. But because of what's happened in Florida, the state of Georgia decided we're going to regulate Burmese pythons, and nobody in the state can buy, sell, or trade any pythons after a certain date. Now, those of us who had Burmese pythons were grandfathered in. We could keep them, but we have to microchip them, register them with the state, and then, because they are now regulated, in order to do any type of educational display or presentation with one, you have to have a permit and a number of other things, insurance, a business license, an LLC, in addition to keeping your registration with the state current. You have to have all that in order to use a Burmese python in any type of presentation. 2 weeks ago today, I did a snake show out at Carver Baptist Church for their Vacation Bible School. All right. I did not take Ted out there because I don't have insurance. I've got him registered and microchipped, but I don't have those other pieces of the puzzle in place. Now, if I was able to take Ted as things stand right now, as I could have done just a few years ago, I would have gone out there. I would have shown Ted. We would have taken pictures. The kids could put him around their shoulders. They could hold him. It would have been absolutely fine. All right. I would have gone out there, wouldn't have charged Carver Church a dime. All right. Go to your school. Whenever, there's a jungle unit or a rainforest unit, I get a lot of calls from schools to come bring the snakes because it's a living example of some of the things that they've studied. All right. I would do that because it was fun. I enjoyed it. It got me it got me out of the house with the snakes, and it allowed the snakes to get out of their cages and to stretch their non-existent legs. All right. So it was a lot of fun. I would do birthday parties. If you need somebody to entertain kids for 45 minutes or an hour, I would come out there and bring the snakes. We had a good time. All right. My pay for that, was a couple slices of pizza, hamburger, hot dog, whatever you were cooking. All right. But here's what's going to happen now. I'm in the process of trying to get the insurance and do all that. And I also have to buy a permit on top of the insurance. So I am now about to incur a significant cost in order to keep and do presentations with this Burmese python. So the birthday party that I used to do for a slice of pizza and a Sprite, I'm now going to have to charge several $100s. When I used to go to schools and to go set up in the gym, Red Ribbon Week was a big week for us doing snake presentations because, believe it or not, I have an anti-drug message that I developed to use with the snakes. So, Red Ribbon Week, I used to be pretty in demand to go to schools, and I've traveled all over the state, literally all over the state, doing presentations with these giant pythons during Red Ribbon Week. Now, whereas I used to do that for a little bit of gas money or do it if it was in Coffee County, not at all, I'm going to have to charge. All right. Why? Because the government has now regulated what I do, and it's not a bad thing to have the insurance, to have the safety net in place. I've never had anything bad happen to anyone else. I've had a few scary things happen when snakes turn their anger at me doing presentations, but never with kids. I never had anybody bitten or anything like that. But what I'm saying here is, because of government regulation, ill-advised maybe, or ill-informed government regulation, because of that, now I am incurring a significant expense that I'm going to have to pass on. So I'm going to get this stuff done, and either I'm not going to do snake shows anymore because nobody's going to pay for them, and it's going to cost me money, or whereas I used to do something for free, now I'm going to have to charge to recoup my loss. Not necessarily to make any money, but just recoup my loss. All right? It's because of government regulations. So when we're looking at the affordability issue, it's more than gas. It's more than housing. It's more than groceries. All right? If landscapers, pool cleaners, florists, you name it, if you have to have a license or some type of certification for any type of business, it's going to make that service more expensive. If the state were to require landscapers to get certified, then the cost of having somebody come cut your grass and clean up your yard is going to go up. That's going to hurt your family's bottom line. If florists have to have licenses, I know in some states they do. I don't know if we do in Georgia, but if we do, then your $50 bouquet of flowers you want to get your wife on her birthday, 50, 60, whatever, is probably going to double. All right. That makes your household budget, a little bit tighter. So these types of issues permeate throughout our economy, and I don't think it gets enough attention. Now, my snake example is a bad one. That is certainly not an essential good or service, but there are plenty that are very much affected by government regulation. All right. And, Republicans talk about this. You don't see it a lot from the Democratic side. All right. Particularly with regard to the gas issue, because Democrats don't want to relax any environmental regulations. in order to produce more oil here in the United States. But that's what we need. And the affordability issue is actually quite complex. But if you're looking for one of these candidates in the November election to come up with an idea to make something more affordable, it's not going to happen. Mayor Mamdani in New York City says we're going to have government-owned grocery stores that will sell groceries at a reduced cost. President Trump has said we're going to have freedom fuel stations where citizens can buy gas, people can buy gas at a lower cost than going to a commercial gas station. You do not want that. History is full of examples of the government getting involved in these types of enterprises and what happens. If you like groceries, don't go to a government grocery store. Don't let the government get involved in that part of the economy. You're not going to have cheaper gas at President Trump's freedom fuel depots. You're going to have less gas. All right? It's not going to work. That's not what you want. The best case scenario is for the government to find that middle ground, and I think we've gone beyond it, but to find that middle ground between regulating segments of the economy enough to keep them safe and stable, but not so much that it's restrictive, and it keeps private business from investing and from expanding. Okay? If you want housing to go down, you don't want the government taking over housing and kicking private business out. You want the government to deregulate to the point that it allows private business to expand the housing market. That's what happens. Look at government housing. We have government housing. The government provides housing for folks. All right. Is that what most families would want to live in? Government housing is not designed necessarily to be a permanent solution. It has become a permanent solution, but that's not what it was initially designed for. All right. But take a look at what happens when the government gets involved. It's not something that you want. So again, this affordability issue is a little bit tricky. And you've got to really listen and really pay attention to what these candidates are saying and what the political parties are saying and what the end goal is. All right. But you do not want the government regulating these businesses more. You want them regulating it less. And that's not the direction that we're going. So this whole issue scares me. It actually sort of terrifies me. But anyway, we'll be talking more about that. And, when I did my snake show at Carver Church, I just didn't take the big snake out there. All right. And my bill for doing the snake show was 2 plates of spaghetti that I took home. Next year, if they want me to come back, it's not going to be 2 plates of spaghetti. It's going to be something much more substantial, because now the government is making me pay to provide this service. So I will have to charge people, and either people will pay it and I will recoup my losses, or people won't pay it and I will continue to spend money to keep Ted. So anyway, just an example that I thought about. Regulation is not always a good thing. Our tower cam, it's hot. Good Lord, it's been hot. Hot. Again, we can see our lights flashing off in the distance. Again, we're here at night. So not a very pretty view. You see clouds moving in. We got a pretty significant chance of rain every day for the next week until Tuesday. Could be a rainy weekend, rainy into the week, and then some rain through the first part of next week. We're looking at about a 50 to 60% chance. So the rain will be off and on. Once again, when you're traveling, particularly if it's raining in the mornings or in the afternoons when we're picking up kids from school. Be careful all the way around. All the way around. Please, please, please be careful. Give yourself some extra time to move around. So, I thank everybody for streaming with us tonight. Hate being here this late. Don't like to do this as late as it is, but sometimes that's the only time that I have to sit down and gather my thoughts. Again, thank you for streaming. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful night. We will see you next time.